My name's Lucas, I'm 31, and depending on who you ask, I'm either a bartender or something far more intricate. My family prefers the former, especially my dad, Richard. To him, a real man wears a suit, drives a sleek European car, and climbs the corporate ladder, boasting at every family gathering about his latest promotion. You know the type. So when I dropped out of college at 22 and chose to work behind a bar, not as a temporary gig but as my career, he made it clear I was a disappointment. Not in a dramatic, disowning way. That would have required too much effort. Instead, he gradually erased me from the family, conversations, photos, even holiday seating plans. My mom followed his lead. My sister, Sophie, went along with it too. So I stopped showing up to family events. That is, until last weekend. Sophie got married in a lavish wedding at a sprawling estate that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale movie. I wasn't invited to the engagement party or told about the bridal shower, but a formal invitation to the wedding arrived in the mail, hand-addressed by Mom. Maybe guilt got to her, or maybe it was because Grandpa Thomas, Dad's father, the only one who ever cared about me, insisted he wouldn't attend unless both grandkids were treated equally. Yes, no rented tux or flashy car for me, just a sharp black suit, a clean shave, and a quiet arrival during cocktail hour. I planned to stay on the sidelines, congratulate Sophie, and leave before the cake was cut. But fate had other plans. As I stepped onto the stone path leading to the venue's grand hall, I caught the tail end of a familiar chuckle. Dad's. I rounded the corner and saw him by the open bar, chatting with distant cousins and one of Sophie's new in-laws. His glass was raised, his words slightly slurred. "Lucas, oh, you mean the bartender," he sneered, the word dripping with disdain. "Probably pouring cheap whiskey at some dive bar downtown. He wouldn't last 5 minutes here." They all laughed, even Mom. I could have turned back, but I didn't. I clenched my jaw, straightened my posture, and kept walking as if I hadn't heard a thing. My hands trembled, not from shame, but from holding back. I hadn't seen Dad in over 2 years, and his first words about me were a punchline. The reception hall was massive, marble floors, soaring ceilings, chandeliers large enough to crush a small car. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns sipped champagne and laughed like they were born for it. I stayed on the edge of the room, watching the social machine hum along without me. Then the couple made their entrance, Sophie in a radiant white gown, her new husband Daniel in a sharp navy tux. They looked perfect. Sophie spotted me and froze for a moment, surprised. Daniel didn't notice, not yet. After the introductions and toasts, guests mingled again. When Sophie and Daniel reached me, she offered a tight smile. "Lucas, didn't expect you here," she said. "You invited me," I replied calmly. "Right," she nodded quickly, looking away. Daniel extended his hand. "Good to meet you." Daniel," I said, shaking his hand. "I know." He grinned, but then his smile faded. He stared at me, really stared. His grip loosened, his brow furrowed. "Wait, what's your last name again?" I tilted my head. "Same as hers." He pulled out his phone, pretending to check a message, but I saw his fingers typing, then silence. He glanced at the screen, then at me, then back again. His face paled. You know that look when someone realizes they've misjudged everything? That was him. He muttered something about needing a drink and hurried off. Sophie looked puzzled. "What was that?" I shrugged. "Now you're probably wondering what he saw, what made him freeze. Let's backtrack. Yes, I started as a bartender, but what I never told my family, not out of secrecy, but because they never asked, is that I co-founded a craft spirits company 7 years ago. We started small, selling to local bars and specialty shops. Then things took off, viral marketing, celebrity endorsements, and a major distribution deal. By 29, I'd bought out my partner. By 30, I had licensing agreements across 3 continents. My bartending job is now running a multi-million-dollar business employing over 60 people. But none of that ever came up with my family because they never saw me as worth knowing. They'd written me off years ago as the dropout, the failure, the cocktail slinger, and never bothered to update their story. Until now. As the night went on, whispers spread through the room. I saw Daniel murmuring to his brother, then his father, then a groomsman who shot me a wide-eyed glance before looking away. Between the salad and the main course, Dad approached me. "Lucas," he said, his tone oddly cautious. "Didn't expect you here." "You invited me," I said, my expression neutral. Right, he chuckled, forcing it. "Still bartending, huh?" I could have let it slide, smiled, and kept the peace, but something in me broke. "I haven't tended bar in 5 years," I said. "But one of my products is in your glass right now. Ask the bartender. The tequila you're drinking, that's mine." He blinked. What? I own the company that makes it. He laughed, but it wasn't genuine. You're kidding. I didn't respond. I walked to the bar where the bartender was stacking glasses. I waited until he noticed me. Hey, I said. You using Vierks for the house tequila? Yeah, he replied, brightening. Vierks Blanco, great stuff, you tried it. I'm the founder, I said quietly. His eyes widened. No way, I nodded. Way, Dad had followed me and heard every word. I could feel his worldview cracking behind me. And that's when things really started to unravel. It didn't take long. I left Dad at the bar and returned to my table, barely sitting down before I saw him across the room, whispering urgently to Mom. Her eyes flicked to me, then to the bartender, then back to Dad. Her face tightened with confusion, like her reality had just shifted. She stood straighter, smoothed her dress, and approached me with that forced smile she used when pretending everything was fine. Lucas, she said, brushing imaginary dust off my jacket. What was that little joke you told your father? No joke, I said flatly. He asked if I was bartending. I told him the truth. She blinked as if I'd spoken in riddles. You own that liquor company, Vierks? Yes, but you never told us. You never asked, I said simply, her lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced around, noticing the curious looks from cousins, friends, and Sophie's in-laws. Gossip travels fast in a room full of dressed-up people with nothing better to do, especially when the family outcast turns out to be something else entirely. Mom leaned closer, her voice a whisper. You know your father hates being made to look foolish. I met her gaze. Then he should stop acting like he's the smartest man in every room. She flinched, as if my words had stung. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She turned and hurried back to Dad, whose face was now red, not from the tequila this time. Then Sophie approached, arms crossed, looking every bit the poised bride except for the storm in her eyes. Can you explain what's going on? She said sharply. Daniel mentioned you own some company. He said it's a big deal. I nodded slowly. Vierks Spirits, we supply national chains. You've probably seen our ads. She blinked. You're that Vierks, your brand? Since the start. Her jaw dropped slightly. Why didn't you ever say anything? I looked at her, trying to keep years of resentment in check. Sophie, I wasn't invited to your engagement party. You never message me unless it's a group family photo. Last Christmas, you posted about the whole family together, and I wasn't even in the picture. She flushed. I didn't mean anything by it. Sure, I said softly, but that's the point. None of you ever did. She didn't respond, just stood there in her extravagant gown, suddenly unsure of her place in the family dynamic. Then Daniel returned, still pale, clutching his phone like it was radioactive. He said to Sophie, glancing at me nervously. Can we talk? She frowned. What's wrong? He leaned in and whispered something I couldn't hear. Her expression shifted, her jaw dropped, her eyes darted to me, then to his phone. She turned to me slowly. You're on Forbes? She asked, her voice breaking. I nodded. Made the 30 under 30 list 2 years ago. There's a video too. Daniel looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't know who you were when we shook hands. I thought you were just a bartender. I shrugged. It's fine. That's when the room caught up. A bridesmaid whispered to a groomsman. A cousin pulled out his phone, then another and another. One froze, eyes wide, and showed his screen to someone else. My name, my photo, a headline, the bartender who built a spirits empire. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. People approached first politely, offering congratulations, asking about my business, whether I was expanding globally. Then came the opportunists. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, Aunt Margaret, who once said I was squandering my potential, and Uncle David, who'd laughed loudest at Dad's jabs, now shaking my hand like we were lifelong friends. It was like stepping into a different reality. But the best part, Dad's face as he watched from the edge of the room. He looked like a man whose own story had rewritten itself without him. He wasn't even a supporting character anymore. Mom kept whispering to him, but he brushed her off, too stunned to speak. His glass was full again, untouched. I didn't approach him. I didn't need to. I answered a few more questions, gave Sophie a quiet goodbye, and left before the cake was cut. My presence had already done enough. But what happened after I left? That's where it really hit them. I thought I'd made a clean exit, not looking for a dramatic showdown or a grand gesture. I just wanted them to see me, really see me, for once, not as the dropout or the family failure. But dropping a truth like that in a room full of egos doesn't settle quietly. The next morning, I woke to 10 missed calls from an unknown number. I assumed it was spam until I checked the voicemail. It was Daniel. Hey, Lucas, it's Daniel. Sorry to call so early. We need to talk. It's about your dad. The next message, a few minutes later, was quieter. Things got weird last night after you left. Your parents, they kind of lost it, in front of everyone. Call me back. I didn't nod immediately. Instead, I checked social media. There it was, a shaky 20-second video posted by one of Sophie's friends. The audio was faint over the music, but the captions told the story. Father of the bride loses it during speech, storms out mid-reception. The comments were brutal. One read, he was bragging about Sophie's new family, then someone, think it was the groom's cousin, asked why he never mentioned his successful son. He turned red and walked off mid-sentence. Another, heard someone say, at least the bartender made Forbes, thought he'd flip a table. I couldn't help but laugh, not out of spite, though maybe a little. For the first time, Dad's narrative wasn't his to control. He couldn't bury me under his disapproval anymore. I'd outgrown his story. My phone buzzed again, a text from Sophie. Lucas, did you have to humiliate him like that? I stared at it, then replied, I didn't humiliate him, I answered a question, the truth did the rest. She didn't respond. That afternoon, I got an unexpected visitor, Grandpa Thomas. He's always been a man of few but heavy words. When I opened the door and saw him with a paper bag and a weary smile, I let him in without a word. We sat in my kitchen. He pulled out a bottle of my tequila and 2 glasses. If I'm drinking your stuff, I should do it with the man who made it, he said. I smiled. Thought you gave up drinking. I make exceptions when my family gives me something worth celebrating. We sipped in silence before he leaned back. Saw what happened last night. Your dad's not used to being outshined, and he definitely isn't used to being wrong. I nodded. He always wanted to be the loudest voice. And now he's not, Grandpa said. You didn't need to shout. You just showed up. His steady eyes met mine. You did good, kid. That meant more than any apology from Dad ever could, but the fallout wasn't over. Later that week, a cousin I rarely spoke to, Emma, messaged me wanting to catch up and saying she admired my drive. The next day, Uncle David emailed a business proposal for a premium vodka line he wanted to pitch. I ignored both. The real twist came Friday, a certified letter. I thought it was legal trouble, maybe Dad pulling something. But it was from Daniel, a handwritten note requesting a private meeting, no Sophie, no family, just us. He wrote, "There's something you deserve to know about your family and your father." I read that line 3 times. I thought all I deserved was an apology they'd never give. But maybe there was more, something hidden they didn't want me to know. The story wasn't over, it was just starting. I didn't rush to meet Daniel. I waited a few days, unsure if I wanted to uncover whatever he was holding. After the wedding, the whispers, and the sudden flood of fake smiles, I wasn't sure I was ready to dig deeper into the family I'd kept at a distance for a decade. But curiosity won. I texted him a time and place, a quiet coffee shop in the city where no one would recognize or overhear us. Daniel was there when I arrived, in a crisp blazer, hair neat, posture stiff. He stood and offered a cautious smile, unsure which version of me would show up, the quiet disappointment or the man whose name was now in headlines. I sat across from him and got to the point. "What do you want to tell me?" He hesitated, glanced around, then leaned in like we were in a spy movie. "Your dad wasn't just mocking you at the wedding, he's been doing it for years." I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, I figured." "No, Lucas," he said, voice low. "He's been lying to everyone, me, my family, Sophie, your extended family. We thought you were barely scraping by, working odd jobs, living above some sketchy bar." My jaw tightened. "And you all believed him?" He didn't flinch. "Yes," he said it with such certainty, and whenever your name came up, he'd change the topic, laugh, or tell a story about how you couldn't hold a job. That wasn't new, but it still stung. Daniel continued. "After I looked you up and realized who you were, I asked Sophie if she knew. She didn't. She was stunned. When she confronted your parents, your dad didn't deny it. He just said, 'He's not like us.' I had to protect the family from his failure." I stared at him. "Protect the family from me?" Daniel nodded. "It's crazy, but he acted like you were a blemish on their reputation. But I think he knew how successful you were becoming. I think he knew before we did, and he couldn't handle it." I leaned back, the words sinking in. All those years I thought they just didn't care, but they did, just not in the way I'd hoped. Dad had been rewriting my story, turning me into a cautionary tale to prop himself up. A failed son to pity, not celebrate. Daniel slid a manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Proof," he said. "Emails, messages. One where your mom told my mom you were working at a rundown bar near Skid Row, claiming you were one paycheck from begging for help." I opened the envelope, skimming the printed emails and screenshots. Each one was more absurd. Outright lies, fabricated stories, even old photos of me from a distillery setup or a promotional shoot, twisted to show me struggling. I thought you should see them, Daniel said. I didn't know how else to make this right. I looked up. Why are you doing this? He shrugged, shame in his eyes. I'm married into this family now. I didn't realize how much was hidden beneath the surface. And I saw your face at the wedding, calm while everyone else scrambled to keep up. I folded the papers back into the envelope. Thanks, I said quietly. We said goodbye, no handshake, just a nod. Stepping into the sunlight, I felt strange, not angry or surprised, but clear, like the final piece of a puzzle had clicked into place. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove to the suburbs, to the house I hadn't visited in years. The house where I'd grown up, been told who to be, and eventually discarded like a failed project. Mom's car was in the driveway, so was Dad's. I rang the doorbell. Mom answered, her polished smile ready for church friends or neighbors she secretly gossiped about. When she saw me, the smile wavered. Lucas, she said, voice tight. What are you? Is Dad home? She didn't move. Why, I want to talk. After a moment, she stepped aside. He's in the study. I found him at his desk, scrolling on his tablet. He didn't look up. Look who finally came home, he muttered. Not here for a reunion, I said. I'm here to tell you I know, about the lies, the stories you've spread, the emails, the fake narratives, all of it. He froze, set the tablet down, and looked at me. I don't know what you think you know. I tossed the envelope onto his desk. He didn't touch it. You spent years trying to erase me, I said, voice steady. But I didn't vanish. I built something real, and you couldn't stand that, could you? Because it meant admitting you were wrong. He said nothing. You told everyone I was a failure, barely surviving, an embarrassment. But the only embarrassment here is the man who thought lying about his son made him look better. His mouth opened, but I cut him off. I'm not here to argue or yell. I'm here to tell you the version of me you created ends today. The real story's out. You can accept it or spend your life pretending you didn't raise a man more successful than you'll ever be. He flinched. Good, I'm done chasing your approval. You lost that privilege. I turned and walked out. Mom tried to stop me in the hall, stammering about misunderstandings. I didn't look at her. I left that house for the last time. That was 8 months ago. Since then, things have shifted. Not because I forced them, but because I stopped playing their game. Sophie reached out a few times with apologies, long messages full of guilt about the family's favoritism. I replied politely but didn't rush to fix things. Maybe one day, maybe not. Daniel and I stayed in occasional contact. I respect that he told me the truth, though I don't fully trust him. My parents. Not a word, no calls, no emails, nothing. But a few weeks ago, I got an alert about a meeting request with my company's legal team. An anonymous inquiry about licensing fees, traced to a small consulting firm run by Uncle David. I declined it. That same day, I donated a large sum to a nonprofit funding hospitality scholarships for low-income students in my father's name. A week later, I received a letter with no return address, just 2 words. Why, I smiled. Some legacies you inherit, others you build. Mine, it's greater than anything they could have imagined.